Hey friends, welcome to Bokeh, a podcast exploring the ever-blurring lines between the personal and business lives of professional photographers. This is your host, Nathan Holritz, and I'm happy that you can join me today in connecting with photographers and entrepreneurs as we discuss photography, business, and, that sometimes messy thing that we call life. This podcast is brought to you by Photographer's Edit, custom image editing for the wedding and portrait photographer. Just visit photographersedit.com. Bokeh Podcast listeners, welcome back to the show. We are here for a brand new episode, a brand new guest as well, Katie Pearson, who is a portrait and wedding and kids and family and seniors and kind of a little bit of everything photographer from Rhode Island. Is that right, Katie?
Yes, Cumberland, Rhode Island.
Perfect. Well, I have to say again, and I know I said it before we started recording, but thank you for doing this podcast interview today, for making time for us. And
absolutely.
And we're going to actually get into a brand new topic today too, which is a big deal because I've recorded now almost 300 episodes for the podcast.
Wow.
And one of the biggest challenges, of course, is making sure that we don't get too repetitive. I want to make sure that we're adding something fresh all the time. And
right.
So to that point, we're going to actually be talking about how to effectively manage children or kids during a portrait session today, because I have two kids myself. They're quite a bit older now, but I know what it's like to have little kids, to engage with little kids. Of course, I was also a wedding and portrait photographer. I know what that can be like. It can be tough. And you have a good bit of experience with this. And we're going to actually get to some tips and tricks as to how to best manage kids during a portrait session. So we'll go there here in a little bit. But as we normally do at the podcast, we're going to start with a question about brand position, because I think this is a topic that really can't be stressed enough, the significance of it. As business owners in our efforts to market ourselves, how do you set yourself apart from fellow photographers there in your Rhode Island market? What is your brand position?
Well, on my welcome page on my website, I have a tagline that says, "Let's go outside and play," because I like to make the point that we're going to go outside. Mostly all my sessions are on location, and I like my work to be colorful and playful and fun and just outside enjoying the nice weather that we're having. And it just makes a lot more easier and fun for everyone. And I also just say that my purpose is to capture love, relationships, and milestones presented in a fun and colorful way. And my goal is to tell your unique story, portray personalities, and experience real moments.
Yeah, well, and I have to give you props too for putting that up there front and center. I love the simplicity of and really how concise the phrase "let's go outside and play" or the statement "let's go outside and play" is. The reality, of course, is that there are just gobs of photographers that photograph outside. But honestly, I've never heard any photographer come out or read any photographer come out and say specifically that. And so I like the specificity of it. In that sense, I like the uniqueness of it. There are something that's become more popular as of late is to refer for photographers to refer themselves as adventure photographers. And of course, innate to that is this idea of being outside. But this has more of a focus on certainly family work, family portrait work.
Right.
And the idea of going outside and playing really conjures up some great imagery. So props to you for coming up with something very, very lovely.
Thank you. Yeah, my business name too is Divine Wreath Photography. Divine Wreath are two family names.
Okay.
So one's my dad, one's my mom. So my mom used to say to me all the time when I was little, she would just, I'd be playing video games or I'd be watching TV and she'd come over and she'd shut the TV off and she'd say, "Go outside and play." So it's just something that
I like that.
Yeah, I just try to put full circle with my family business name and just, where I've come from, let's just not be inside. Let's go outside and let's just use the elements and work with what we have. And it usually just comes out so much better. I just light up when I go outside, when I see kids running around. I just feel like it's just my own personal taste. Obviously studio portraits are beautiful and great.
Sure.
I just, my personal preference is to go outside and play and have fun. And I feel like it's easier for everyone.
Well, this is a great example too. First of all, I love that you're tying in your family history and your childhood to that phrase, that position, if you will. I also like what you can do with that phrase. It's one thing to come up with a tagline. The cool thing about your so-called tagline is that it also represents what your business does. It's one thing to be cute. It's another thing to come up with a tagline that you can actually do something with in marketing. And your marketing efforts. I mean, what you could do to play off that phrase. As a marketer of sorts, I could go to town with that. That's a lot of fun. And for those of you listening in, this is a great example of, first of all, a brand position of sorts. Realistically, the service that you offer is largely portrait work, right? Is it majority portrait versus wedding?
Yep. It's families, kids, and I also do some weddings. I'm a little bit more pickier with weddings.
Yeah.
But and seniors too. Those are like my main focus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but with that being said, that so-called tagline or brand position, this notion of going outdoors to photograph and to do so in a playful manner. For those of you listening in, this is a great example, not only of a brand position, but a brand position and a tagline that you can do a lot of creative things with. I mean, when it comes to the theme of a website, the theme of a marketing campaign on Facebook or on Instagram, this is a really lovely example. So again, props to you, Katie, for something really, really great here. And I don't want to get stuck too long on this, but it's such an important topic, I think, for all of us, especially as crowded as the photography industry has gotten. Right. We need to be able to distinguish ourselves in what we're doing. So talk to me about your experience as a photographer, a professional photographer. And actually, first, how long have you been a professional photographer?
I started about 7 years ago.
Okay.
And I didn't become full-time until this year, actually.
No way.
It took me a really long time to make the jump.
So the rest of the time, were you shooting kind of part-time, a little bit here and there on the side?
I was working for a company, a toy company, actually, and I was doing commercial photography for them and also laying out catalog pages and things of that nature. So I did that for 10 years and I was doing this on the side as well. And I just loved being outside more so than anything and working with kids and families. And that just made me so much more happier. So I had to do it.
Good for you. Well, good for you making a move towards something that you knew you enjoy. And a lot of people talk about that, but don't necessarily follow through. You actually followed through on it. So props to you for that. But I'd be curious, from your experience, both being a part-time and a full-time photographer, and then also photographing for another company, what would be the first piece of advice that you'd want to give to a fellow professional photographer if you had 15 seconds?
I would tell them that customer service is a priority. Make sure that your clients are happy from beginning to end. Yeah. From the initial inquiry to the final, you give them a gallery or prints or whatever, how you handle your business, just make sure they're happy from beginning to end. A lot of the times, like the comments that I receive after everything's all said and done is that I've been accommodating and patient. So it has nothing to do with photography. It's just more of just being there for them and listening, and just anything happens on the session or with kids, kids fall, kids trip, or they have tantrums, and just remaining calm, patient, communicating that everything's going to be fine. Don't worry, just keeping calm and go with the flow, be prepared for anything and handle it professionally.
Well, first of all, the about pictures on your website, for those of you listening in, divinewreathphotography.com. We'll link to this in the show notes. It's DEVINEREITH photography.com. And of course, also on Instagram, Divine Wreath Photography. We'll link to both of these in the show notes. But if you go to the about page on Katie's website, Katie, your smile is just like so full of energy and excitement. And I was just talking to another photographer about the significance of energy and how we bring energy to our relationship with our clients. And I can imagine how that translates not only to the adults, but to the kids as well.
Yes.
But it is so true that the experience that we create, the way that we engage with our clients or potential clients, in many cases makes a bigger difference even than the photography itself. And I know that we've probably kind of beat this topic to death, but I've mentioned before in the podcast that as a wedding photographer, the number of times that I have heard, "You're such an incredible photographer," before a client or family of a client has ever seen an image is such a, it speaks to the significance of how we engage with our clients. And so this can't be stressed enough. And I'm glad that you bring this up. We'll continue to say it because it's so important that we engage with our clients in this way to create a good experience. Talk to us about free time, though, because you have a family and you run a business, and there's a lot to keep up with on both ends. How do you balance things? How do you make time for yourself and for your family despite being a business owner as well?
So the first big thing was outsourcing editing to Photographers Edit.
Oh, no way. Okay. So I know I say this occasionally, but I didn't even know this was coming. This was not a setup at all.
No,
but I appreciate the shout out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was working full time, October is always the busiest time of year for us in New England. Like the foliage, everybody wants, Christmas card pictures. So October is usually the busiest month. And also it was the busiest month in my full time job too, because we're getting out the catalogs for the new year. So I was working a lot and with the baby and tired. She was sick all the time. I was up all hours of the night. So I joined a photographer Facebook group. And it came up just automatically about outsourcing editing. And I never heard of it before. And then a ton of photographers recommended Photographers Edit. So I went on the website and I sent like just one batch. I'm like, might as well just try it and see how it is. And then comes back a couple of days later. And just that time away, I feel that like 2 days or 3 days or whatever it is, it just gives me like, I can focus on something else, either business wise or family wise too. Yeah. And then when images come back, it just like, it just gives me like just a new sense of like a new look at it. Because if I were to sit there and I also like contemplate over and over again, like, is this the right color? Does this look good? Like I'm always like contemplating in my head. So just to step away from it, a couple days, it comes back. It's just like a new fresh look on it, which is great because then I can just give it to my clients and they're happy. And then it just worked out so great. So I just kept using you guys and I'm so much happier.
That's really cool. Well, first of all, thank you for your business and also thank you for the shout out. I mean, it's encouraging to know that the effort that we're making, because things are crazy, or they can be anyway, quite crazy behind the scenes. And most of the time, our clients or potential clients don't see the effort that we put not only into the actual editing process, but also making sure that our clients have the best possible experience. And this is a tough job. We've been doing it for over 10 years. There's a lot that goes on, but I just, it's so rewarding and encouraging to know that ultimately it's making a difference, not just on a business level, but on a personal level too. And that's our biggest goal is to, hey, let's make sure that photographers have a little bit of extra time in their life for the significant people in your life. And by the way, your daughter is adorable. There are also pictures of Katie's daughter on her About page. Ellie, is that right?
Yeah, she's sassy.
Oh, she is absolutely gorgeous. And it's a lot of work. I know, having a young child. Mine are 17 and 14 now, and I miss the younger stage. See, there are elements of that. They're just, I miss it so much. But she's beautiful. But anyway, all that to say, to have time for your daughter, to have time for your husband, and to have time to do other things besides sit in front of a computer, it's so significant. And that's so much of what this podcast is about, and of course, what Photographers Edit is about. So I appreciate the shout out. I appreciate you sharing your experience with that as well. And for those of you listening in, this isn't just about editing either. I mean, there are other elements of your business that you can delegate either to a service, a piece of software to automate. There are other third parties out there that can help with album design, certainly putting your album together for you, accounting work, admin work. I mean, the list goes on. If you have an opportunity to be able to delegate something, do that. So it frees you up to focus on the stuff that actually matters most to you. This is a great, great lesson. Talk to us about a business or self-help book that you've really loved.
I'm currently reading Girl, Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis. I know that's been mentioned before on the podcast, but I just like how relatable and real it is. And it always just makes me laugh. Like the first sentence of every chapter, I just laugh every time.
Wow.
It's just, it's really, really cute book. Yeah, it's just very relatable and it's just, I love it.
What's the biggest takeaway for you so far through that book?
Just like, it's okay to fail and it's okay to be, who you are and just embrace. Like, I think for a while too, I was contemplating like, I should be, more studio because everyone loves backdrops and props. And the more I did it, the more I didn't like the outcome of it. So, it's okay to be true to yourself. Like, I think there are people who want to go outside and just have playful pictures and you don't have to please everyone, just please yourself and your client too. You want to work together, attract the people that want what you're putting out there, so things like that. It's just a great book to read, and like how she balances out with family life as well. And it's just a really great book. Also Bokeh too, because of all the show notes. It's just great to, even if I don't have time to like listen to all of it, if I can search on the podcast and just anything that you need to learn about or you're interested in learning more, it's just great to have those show notes that you can just look up all the tips. So I have like a list of stuff that I need to read.
Wow.
So I just have to get there.
I need to have you on the podcast more often to give us all these lovely shout outs. But I'm so glad that you brought that up because, I mentioned the show notes pretty much on every episode because there is a lot of information there. And shout out to Haley, who is listening in right now and editing this episode, who does all the work to put that information together. But it's a wealth of information, not just an outline of the major points from the conversation, but also links to the various resources and so forth. I'm so glad that you mentioned that. And of course, we'll link to the book that you mentioned, Girl Wash Your Face, as well in today's show notes. If anybody listening in, just go to Bokeh, Bokeh podcast.com, and you can find that there.
And also one last one was just Creative Live. But the people that I found on there, Elena Blair, the lifestyle photographer, I really like her style of work. One thing that I took away mostly from her was just telling your clients, like, don't look at me, like, just stop looking at me, look at each other, interact. And you kind of have to direct and guide your clients a little bit, but then their own unique story is going to come out on their own. But you have to tell them to, like, not. I think there's still just that stigma of, like, you have to look at me and you have to look and smile perfectly. And of course, you should do here and there, because every grandmother or somebody in the family would want a nice picture like that too. But I love the candid or like interaction moments, walking, playing, running around. It's just really fun too. She was really great. And also,
by the way, how do you spell her name? Because I'm actually looking it up on Instagram as we talk now.
Elena, Elena. It's Elena Blair, and Blair. Okay, cool. Photography. Yeah.
And we'll link to her in the show notes as well. Yeah. I mean, the reality is most of the time when we're looking at fellow family members or our kids or significant others, whoever it is that's in our life, they're not posing for a camera. And so it's nice to actually have images that remind us of day-to-day life. And I think that's really, really lovely.
Because it goes by so fast too. You want to remember, especially now that I'm a mom, I feel like ever since I became a mom, I just photograph a lot differently than I used to. It's not all about being perfect anymore. Like you have to embrace everything,
Yeah. Well, your perspective changes for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's really great. Yeah. We'll link to Elena's Instagram in the show notes. It's actually Elena's Blair _photography.
Yes. Sorry.
No worries at all. We'll put that in the show notes for everybody else if you want to go check out that work as well. Thanks so much for sharing all of that. That's really lovely.
No problem.
So talk to us about the most unusual item in your camera bag. And as I've said on multiple episodes before, this doesn't have to be a camera or a lens. One of the most interesting things to me, actually, that I've heard so far in this segment of the episode is a glue dot. Like, I never thought about the idea of using a glue dot and how you could use that for so many things. So what's that unusual item in your camera bag?
That's a good one. It's a small handbag that has a picture of a camera on it.
Okay.
And it's just all kinds of things from like the travel section at Target.
No way. Okay.
So like bobby pins, safety pins, Band-Aids, a pen, gum, Q-tips, aspirin tissues, like all those little things that like kind of you'd find in like a lady's bathroom at a wedding. Just like all the little travel items that just fit perfectly in a little small bag that I just put in my camera bag just in case if something happens at a wedding and I usually use it pretty much all the time. Okay. I go in it all the time. Yeah.
Well, and when we talk about, again, the simple things that we can do to create a better experience for the client, it's funny how, what we may be able to capture a really great image at a session or at a wedding or event. But the thing that they may remember is the fact that, within 10 seconds of them cutting themselves, we had a Band-Aid available for them because it's right there.
So
it's those little details like that can really make a massive difference. Okay. So you said this is something that you actually got from Target?
Oh, I don't know. I actually got as a gift, but it's just like a little pouch, like a zipper bag. And then I replenish wherever I go, like any pharmacy store or Target. And then I just buy and I just replenish all, just take a little Target run and then get all the stuff in the travel section
and fill it up. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I gotcha. Yeah. That's a great tip. Okay, cool. We'll for those of you listening in, if you don't have something like that with you to take to shoots, make sure you do, because that is such a great idea. Let's talk about photographing kids. And I know that you said you've been shooting now for 7 years. Have you been photographing kids from the very beginning?
Yes. So I actually started in college. I was majoring in art education, and we had to take all kinds of subjects for every subject in the art realm. So I took photography, and I didn't realize how much I loved it. I just felt natural. It felt great. Yeah. So I picked my niece and nephew as a series, and I ended up photographing them for 1.5 years, and I loved the progression. It just started off as very them smiling and looking at me. And then it turned into, really thinking outside the box and being creative. And so that kind of started it. That's where it began. And then when I was at my corporate job, I asked to bring models in because I was still longing for children and interaction with, models, families, or or, children with the product. So they would come in, but still I was like, this still isn't like what I want, So, and then I just started, our friends were starting to have babies. And then I just said, can I take like a family portrait? It's something that I love photography. I'm looking for a creative outlet. Something's missing, and I just want to fill this because I need to. It's
Sure.
just something that you need to do. So yeah, I just started photographing friends, kids, and whoever would let me for a long time. And then it just kept building up. I just got a great portfolio, and then finally this year I was like, okay, I think I can do this now full time. So
now, were you posting those photos to Facebook and kind of getting other clients, quote unquote clients, or opportunities to photograph as a result?
Yeah. Yep. Just Facebook alone, and Instagram only the past year and a half or so.
Okay.
Yeah. Start hopefully soon Pinterest and everything too. So yeah, I'm just slowly I'm very, very slow with all of this. So props to all the photographers that just jump in and do it like right away. That's amazing. Yeah. It took me a really long time, but
but I still have to, you talk about giving other photographers props. I have to give you props too for still making it happen, because there are so many people in life that talk about doing the thing that they love to do or that they dream to do, and they never do it, sadly, for whatever the reason. And so you still made it happen, regardless of however long it took. You're still doing it now, and so kudos to you for that. And
Thank you.
Not only that, for everybody listening in, if you want to go check out Katie's work, you can. There's some really beautiful work there on her Instagram, and you can also go check out her website as well. What type of sessions right now? I think you alluded to this briefly earlier, but what type of sessions are you photographing these days that involve kids?
Mostly like the families. It'll be like a family of 4 or 5, then mom, dad, or whoever, like 2 parents or 2 guardians, and then like children. And then also mini sessions. It's just half the time, 25 minutes instead of an hour.
Okay.
And that's always fun with 2 or 3-year-olds. And then I'll do occasional newborns and cake smashes. Those are inside. So I'm trying to step away more from that, just because I technically will do those sessions indoors because of, newborns. I just like to keep them warm and cozy, comfy, and then cake smashes, it's a mess. So I like to keep it contained inside.
Yeah, for sure.
But pretty much like the outdoor ones are the family sessions and mini sessions.
Okay. So obviously, as we've already alluded to, kids can be a little bit crazy. You've got a young one. I've had young ones, and I've photographed countless kids at this point. But as cute as they can be, things can get a little bit crazy as well. And so I have to ask, from your experience so far, like, what's one of the craziest scenarios that you've ever seen kind of play out in front of your camera?
I have 2 stories. One's a quick one.
Okay.
One is just a friend of mine, thank God. So I knew her personally. We were taking pictures, and her son, I saw like a beautiful like rose bush, and I was like, oh, let's go in front of it. And he just ran backwards, and thorns all in his punctured. Yep, blood everywhere. So thank God I had Band-Aids. So just stuff like that happens all the time.
Oh,
like
I'm
kids
sure.
are constantly falling down. Yeah. Ruin their clothes. But that's why I try to emphasize we're going to be playing outside, because it just happens. It's inevitable. Like it will happen. Someone will be bleeding or falling down.
Yes.
It just happens. And to me, like, you just have to handle it. Like, it's not a big deal. It's okay. We can clean it up and we can keep moving on. Just
go with
keep
the flow.
It flowing.
Yep.
Yeah, just go with the flow. So there's that one. And then also I met a family of 4. It was mom and dad and 2 kids. And I photographed them the year before at the newborn session. So now the youngest one was a year old. And I think the second child was about 3. 3 is usually like that age where it's pretty difficult. So I met them, and the oldest one just started running, just ran away the whole time. And of course, I was new to photographing families. Yeah. So I didn't really have like the tips that I know now, but I just felt like it was out of control. And honestly, I think like, I know you expect like kids to be the crazy ones, but I think it makes it a little bit more difficult when the parents, when they just put more emphasis of like, really have so much time and, you have to pay attention. Like, it just makes it out. Sometimes, honestly, the parents make it worse than the kids. So I don't mind running after the child. So, like, I don't mind. I don't mind running wherever they will be. And they do. They usually play it up because they want to test the parents. And that's always what happens most of the time. Like, they usually will not listen at all. So it's okay to like, I don't mind. I always say like, I don't mind running after them. We're going to go where they go, and then we're going to follow them, and then we'll play a game to make it seem like it's like a game and fun instead of let's sit on this blanket and look at me, because it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, but it goes back to that idea of setting the tone. Like I think about myself as a parent, and I know that there have been situations where my stress has affected the way my kids are feeling, and probably then translates to how they act in a situation. Obviously, we've seen that with our own clients, and so then it's on us as the photographer in some cases to set the right tone, like you said at the very beginning of our conversation. And I think that's so important to remember. Let's make this really, really specific though, and really practical for our listeners. Can you share some tips or tricks that have worked really well for you to help manage the kids? So, even despite them running around and you having to chase them, you're ultimately able to get some beautiful imagery.
Yes. So also what I have in my bag, because I want to separate like the key item I have in my bag, which is that little like the camera bag full of all the travel items. But this is also stuff that I have in my bag for kids. So I will always have bubbles and stickers on me. And you can buy them in bulk or the dollar store too. So like I'll have a roll of stickers and I'll put them right on my arm so they see how many, and they're so cheap. I'll say like, if you're so good, I'll give you all of these stickers. So then that usually helps. Okay. And bubbles are good for little ones just to direct their attention to you, so you can blow them and then they'll look in your way. They like to pop them. It's more interactive. So that's always good. My next one would be, they're called shutter huggers. They're like little animals that go around the shutter, and they have like a squeak at the bottom of them. Okay. And they're good for dogs too. I've had a couple dogs in sessions. Yes. And I use it, squeak, and their ears will tilt too, and they'll make like the attention like to the camera. So that's always good.
Okay, I'm actually curious as you're talking about these though. I'm going back to the first thing that you mentioned, the bubbles and stickers. Are they relevant to a particular age range? I mean, this may be obvious to some, but just to get as specific as possible.
I would say like 2 to 3, sometimes even 4. Ages 2 to 4.
2 to 4 there. Usually good. Okay, and then what about the shutter huggers? Where have you found the most best results there? Babies,
probably like 6 months and up, like till about like a year and a half too.
And is Shutter Hugger, is that a particular brand, or is that just kind of a general search that you can do on Amazon?
Yeah, I think that's a search you can do on Amazon. Yeah, okay. Shutter Huggers.
Okay, cool.
The next one would be like a feather duster to tickle kids. So you can be in like, if they're shy, I would start with their feet and like tickle their feet with the feather duster.
Yeah.
So that way they, they're like, oh, she's, or I'll tickle myself to let them know that this is soft. I'm not going to poke you with something. I'm not, because some kids get a little shy and a little stranger danger, especially with a camera. Yep. So, just like tickling their feet, and then, then sometimes that will help them break out of their shell a little bit.
And so would you say roughly that same 2 to 4 age range, or does this work for older or younger kids too?
I mean, sometimes adults too. I mean, sometimes you have to tickle the dad. Need to be tickled. Like, come on, dad. Like, it's going to be okay.
I can totally see you doing that too. That's funny.
Yeah, I've actually broke out, I think, my Shutter Hugger at like for Gleesman. If they're like, come on, lady. I'm like, all right, don't make me use it. And then they start laughing.
Oh, like, okay, absolutely. That's brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, I guess all ages, but mostly, 2 to 4 age, just because they're so, especially if they're in a new park they don't know, and they just want to explore. I mean, think about like, if think about yourself, you go to a new place for the first time, you want to explore, you want to go places, you don't want to sit in one spot,
100%.
So,
yeah, I'm like a 4-year-old myself. I totally get it.
Exactly. So these little things kind of like, bring it together for a little bit. So
okay.
My next one would be just acting silly. You can't be afraid to sing, dance, just do whatever you have to do. I usually make silly noises and get everyone involved too of trying to make the child happy, or just do what you got to do.
And I have to be honest here. And probably many of our listeners who have listened for a long time know this about me at this point, but I'm a little bit of an uptight personality. So this would be a challenge for me. I know that I have to kind of, this sounds overly serious, I think, but like set ego aside a little bit and not worry about how I look in the process of behaving in a silly manner.
I've learned just to like let it go. Like you just gotta. Yeah, I actually look up and parents are looking at me like I'm crazy. But you just have to like I'm usually like do like you have to like you just have to be upbeat and energy and not too annoying, but just enough to like make them laugh, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's good.
My next one, my personal favorite, is the Fart app. So
no way. Okay.
It's an app that has fart noises and it's on my phone. And I usually, I'll break that one out with bubbles, stickers. Tickling doesn't work. That's my go-to.
That's your go-to?
Break out my fart app.
Is there a particular one? Because I know that there were a bunch of them on the App Store there, I think, for a little while.
I think I just searched fart app and it came up.
I'm sure there are multiple options that will do the job.
Yeah. And there's like 20 noises, and each one, some are short, some are long, and yeah, it works great. And I'll usually like put it behind me so it makes it look like I'm doing it, and I'll say, "Oh, it's me," and then they'll laugh so hard. Like usually,
and the parents are making faces at you again.
Oh, yep. And parents are like, "Oh my God, this girl is crazy," but it works. The kids laugh, or they'll definitely at least look at me. They'll look at the camera. So if they want one picture of the child looking at me, so that's a good way to get their attention because they're loud and it's funny. And it usually works great with like typically boys, but girls too. Girls will laugh, and yeah, it's just fun. And also with the fart app, I also kind of like tied in like YouTube Baby Shark. Like Baby Shark was really a big hit this past season, and like Coco Melon, it's called. So they have like little songs and stuff for little kids that would usually work good. Sometimes I just put like the camera behind me, just like crack open my phone and just, do some YouTube action, just try to like sing with them, interact with them to get them comfortable.
That's cool. Okay. That's a great tip, actually.
My next one, sometimes I'll have the child, if they're shy, I'll have them come over and press my camera, like actually take the picture of the family.
Okay.
To make them feel important and be like my assistant. I'll say like, "Oh, do you want to be my assistant? Come over, help me. Like, I need help with my camera. Come over and help me with this." And they usually will love that, especially if they're the youngest child. They'll like to feel important because they're never like the big sister or big brother, a little psychology there. So.
Yes, I love it.
The next one, when you initially meet them, I should probably put this the first one. When you initially meet your family, I get on their level. So I'll squat down and put my camera behind my back and just look at them in their eyes and just say, big smile, are you ready to have some fun? We're going to, don't even mention taking pictures. Like, we're going to go play. We're going to go explore this park and let's go have some fun. Just so they know that you're, just be on their level, kind of almost like a, I don't know, like showing respect of their size,
100%. Well, you talk about the psychological element of how you engage with them. This is definitely one as well.
Mm-hmm. And then also just having patience and never getting frustrated. So if something's not going your way, don't give up, don't show that you're frustrated. Just say, all right, let's move on to the next thing. And if there's like a spot where really great lighting is, it happens to me all the time. You see something in your head, you're like, oh, I want them right there doing this. And then you take them over there and they go running the other way. And you just have to, remember to be like, okay, we'll come back to that and, go do what they want to do. And then say, all right, now that we did this, can we go back over here to this spot? And that usually helps. So just don't get so frustrated if it doesn't go your way that first moment that you say it, go back to it. Don't give up. And and just the last one would be to, direct them to jump and twirl and walk around. I think kids think too, they'll stand in front and go cheese with a big fake smile because that's what their parents say to them to take pictures. So you can tell them like, why don't you jump up in the air or make a funny face or twirl around and or run there to that place and walk back or something like that. So that way they're like, oh, okay, like this is, I can actually move around. It's not so, I don't have to stay in one spot. And I think that helps too.
Yeah, you don't have to be stiff. Yeah, that's really good. Okay, so I actually wrote down 10 here, and this is really good. I'm just going to run back through them really quick because and of course we'll list these in the show notes and link to as many different of the products that were mentioned as possible. But the first thing that you mentioned was bubbles and stickers. Secondly, the shutter huggers. 3 was the feather duster to tickle not only the kids but maybe even the parents, which is pretty funny. 4 was being willing to act silly. 5 was that good old fart app. 6, I went ahead and wrote down YouTube as well. The idea of bringing up popular songs for the kids that kind of capture their attention and, like you said, sing along with them. I think that's a really, really great idea. And you got that tool right there. 7, have the child use the camera or be an assistant, which is really cool because it probably not only gets them engaged, but it helps ease their whatever concerns there might be about that camera, that thing that's pointing at them. That's good. 8 was get on the kids' level. And I mean, that speaks for itself. That's such a great reminder. 9, have patience, go with the flow. I mean, this is, I think, at least for me anyway, this is a great just life lesson. It's a good reminder for all of us for anything really, but certainly as photographers and especially with kids. And then lastly, encouraging or directing the kids to jump, twirl, to move around. They don't feel like they have to be stiff. And I think that's a great thing too. And probably, I mean, if the expectations created ahead of time with the parents that the kids don't have to be stiff, it probably help ease their tension as well, right?
Right, exactly. Yep.
That's really great. Now, I know a lot of these things require using at least one hand. So are you one-handing the camera the majority of the session, do you find?
Yeah, I have 2 cameras on me, and I usually will so I'll start in one spot and then take some pictures. I'll just kind of gauge the situation by how the energy is with them too. I'll if mom and dad are kind of more laid back and, oh yeah, go follow them, go do what you have to do. We'll come back to, this portrait or this pose, next, or if they seem more frustrated that they're not paying attention for them, then I will try to really tell them okay, we really need to, do this first and then we'll go to this place next. So I always try to just gauge their energy and also I give out a questionnaire before the session. So I know exactly what they're looking for, what their must-have photo is. So I really will try to focus on that, what the client wants.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Management of expectations goes both ways, right? So I think that's a really great thing. But when I said one-handing the camera, I was just thinking you've got one hand, you've got the bubbles in one hand and then the camera in the other, or the feather duster in one hand and the camera in the other. Are you kind of multitasking throughout the session?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. So I will blow bubbles with one hand and then just have my other camera on and then just do both. Yeah, both at the same time.
So I'm curious, maybe this is getting overly technical, but what camera are you using? And does the autofocus system work pretty well where you don't even have to stick your eye behind the viewfinder? You can just kind of shoot away as the kids are interacting with that feather duster?
Oh, yeah. I use Nikon. I have an 810 and a 750.
Okay.
And I just do the autofocus. Yeah, it works really, really great. I do continuous focusing too. So because they're moving so much and just a really high shutter. Yeah. And that works out pretty good. And usually I'll blow bubbles. I will put them down, but just have them right next to me. And usually bubbles too for kids are usually under 3 or so. Sure. They won't be moving that much. Especially if it's a baby, they'll just be on a blanket or they won't be moving around too much. So I'll have time to close the cap or whatever and then pick up my camera and manually do everything. Yes. So,
Wow. I'm not a good multitasker. I'm impressed by this one hand, the camera, another hand, a toy, doing all this at once. But this has been seriously one of the most practical episodes I think we've done in a while. And I love the simple tips that are applicable right away. It's going to be great for our listeners. So I really can't thank you enough for making time to share all of that with us. Will you just tell us one more time where our listeners can find you online, your website and social media?
Of course. It's Divine Wreath Photography. It's all one word on website and Instagram and Facebook. It's DEVINEREITH and then photography.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll link to that in the show notes again, Bokeh, Bokeh podcast.com. If you're listening in, you don't take advantage of the show notes. Per Katie's recommendation, do so. And we're going to have a lot in the show notes from today's episode. This has been really great. Katie, thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening to the Bokeh Podcast today. Will you let us know what you think by leaving a review of the podcast in iTunes or maybe in the Apple Podcast app? And I'd love to hear from you personally with your thoughts about the podcast, maybe suggestions about future topics and guests for the show. My direct email is nathan@photographersedit.com. The Bokeh Podcast is brought to you by Photographers Edit, custom image editing for the wedding and portrait photographer. Just visit photographersedit.com.